Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and I've got some good news and some bad news. Good news is, well, trapping single target is still pretty insane, and it's a very effective boss killer without really having to go too far out of your way for getting the damage to get there. The bad news is, it still sucks balls as a playstyle, and trappers just do not feel very good, at least in my opinion, especially against some of the newer content like Legion. It has only really served to exacerbate the current trapper problem of throwing a trap, waiting for the delay goes, the trap explodes, and then you kill something, and something like Legion just is so anti-friendly to that it makes pretty unpleasant mapping experiences. For the most part, maps are just a little bit slower maybe, and a little bit more uncomfortable, but I basically had to go to leveling in Uber Atziri to have some fun on this character, and I was doing Uber Atziri from like level 82 onwards because it's pretty smooth for the endgame content, and it's absolutely fine for that type of shit. But for actual mapping, it's just the delay is too annoying, and then especially when it comes to Legion, you've got so many rares, so many monsters out there that if they're not dying instantly or you're not interacting instantly with that content, you are gonna be most of the time fucked. I didn't actually die that many times to Legion or maps. It's just so uncomfortable to have to play around, run around, dodge, throw your traps, and ultimately I did put Val Ice Nova on a trap into my setup so that I could at least pop the Legions easier, and then hopefully when I've got the really big Legion packs out there, can also chuck in another Vile Ice Nova and hope to clear up a bunch of things in one trap throw instead of a bunch of trap throws. It's kind of a problem with just the skill itself though. Ice Trap, it's not that great for clearing. I've got decent enough area by stacking as much area as I could, and it's respectable, but it's really not enough to counteract the trapping situation. And then I did try out plenty of other traps, and Lightning Trap is one of the ones that's quite commonly seen as a decent trap right now, and it's certainly better for clear. It's not that much better though in my opinion, and its single target is a lot worse than Ice Trap, and the real problem comes into play with the noise it makes every single time you throw a trap. It's pretty goddamn cancer. Like, it's just non-stop pew 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 pew, and it's a bit too much to take in for just non-stop mapping. Overall, Ice Trap was a lot more aesthetically pleasing and enjoyable for me, even though the clear wasn't that good. For Delves though, it was a pretty respectable build. You could avoid most of the stuff you needed to avoid. It cleaned up the corridors rather well, and it could do all of the deepest delves I did rather respectably. However, mapping was just kinda meh, and then single target was of course insane, so I had some fun on the character. I did manage to kill plenty of bosses, did manage to do plenty of endgame content, but ultimately it's just not something I enjoyed all that much compared to plenty of my other characters that I've been playing and would happily, you know, keep mapping on, keep endgaming on, whereas this one I kind of couldn't wait to put away by level 90, which is usually a little bit lower level than I usually get to play, but it was fast ultimately. Like, it's not that much slower, it's just uncomfortable to play. I got to level 90, did like 5 Uber Elders with a bunch of attempts at level 68, and plenty of Uber series, a couple of 5-way legions, something like that, all in about 16, 17 hours, which is a pretty quick turnaround of a character for me, but it just isn't really worth going any deeper in. So like I said, it's not that slow, it's just uncomfortable and unpleasant in my opinion anyway. You can see a pretty good example of it in the background with my attempt on the 5-way Legion. I did end up getting like, I don't know, 1.5 to 2 bars down all in all for the loot bonus. The single target on the bosses was potentially really good sometimes if I'm not getting completely dicked by everything around it. But clearing the trash was so uncomfortable, and so much of it was just always, like, there's just always a lot of stuff around you trying to kill you when you don't have super good clear or instant clear, and like I said, instant interaction with the content. You actually really notice these monsters. Like, prior to this, on almost any other character, it's just trash, and you know, it's whatever. You clear it, you blow it up in a single screen, doesn't really matter. This sort of stuff, every single time you're going to the next boss, you really notice these monsters and what they're doing, their hits, their abilities and how painful they can be. But line it all up and the single target is pretty respectable, as you can see, and a lot of the time we're even freezing some of the bigger bosses and minions, and so the freeze worked rather nicely on the ice trap, but I just cannot really get behind ice trap or a trapping playstyle in general, especially when the League content requires you to be so mobile, so flexible with your playstyle. Trapping just felt pretty bad in my opinion right now. I'll still go over the character, how I built it, just in case you want to build something like this, because it was really nice for bossing and the end game, but just not that great for general gameplay. So here is the character. It's level 90 Inquisitor called Old Man Tosses Traps. 19 hours to get to this stage, and like I said, it did maybe 6 Uber series, 5, 6, something like that. Couple Uber Elders, bunch of attempts at level 68, and ultimately the kill there, and all the endgame content I could fit in while stomaching the trap playstyle. So we managed to get 4k life, 1500 ES. Now that is with Mind Over Matter and Eldritch Battery through Devouring Diadem. That combo on an Inquisitor is still so juicy, but well, I don't know if Inquisitor was still the right move in the end. The damage was pretty damn nice, but we did miss a few of the quality of life things on Saboteur, though I don't think they would have fixed the actual problems of the Trapper. I don't, ultimately, just, yeah. The underlying problems of Trapper I don't think are fixed by Saboteur, they're just made a little bit nicer. Because we did go with Sunblast Belt, so you have 80% reduced trap duration there, meaning whenever you throw your traps, they will last for 0.8 seconds. It says trap lasts 0.8 seconds before all of them explode, and of course I do have also a hair trigger jewel, so increased trigger trap area of effect, and I've got a lot of that across the tree throughout the various trapping nodes. So detonating your traps isn't really a problem. It's just the delay of having to throw your traps before something comes in and just steamrolls you. And you can throw a lot of traps with this setup. There's a lot of trap throwing speed. You can get up to 23 traps. And it is, you know, sometimes really fun, especially on the boss encounters, which is where this type of build absolutely shines. So besides that, there's nothing too special going on. I did run a Shimmer on, and the reason for that was to get additional crit chance per power charge, because we run 5 power charges in the end. So our Ice Trap, instead of having a base crit of 5, has 6.5, and then a bunch of extra damage as well. A lot of lightning damage, flat lightning, which Ice Trap scales very nicely off of, because you can see it's got 150% effectiveness there. And that's basically the reason I went with an Inquisitor, because I wanted to run the Shimmer on. I wanted to have a decent amount of hybrid damage, so I got a lot of cold, a little bit of lightning stacking there, and it gets a lot better once you have your power charges up. And I wanted to make sure I was utilizing all of the damage I possibly could through Inquisitor, and it's a lot more damage than a Saboteur would have, but, well, it loses a few little quality of life things, but I think it makes up for those throughout Sanctuary and Pious Path, where you do have a much better ES regen pool, and then a bunch of, well, quality of life in the form of attack speed and Consecrated Ground, which gives you a little bit of regen, but also immunity to a bunch of different ailments. Other than that, the build isn't really anything too outlandish to really mention. There's just a bunch of gear that does resists life, flat damage, I guess, here or there. Traps with 1 additional trap throw, if you're unaware, are really nice for trapping builds. They do require a shaper base, and that means that instead of throwing 3 traps with your cluster traps, you throw 4. So for every 3 traps you're throwing an additional 1 to 4. That's a rather large buff with this type of glove. Aside from that, I crafted some boots pretty easily with pristine fossils. Just managed to hit the life and the movement speed, and then I slammed 1 suffix, put on a spider. So yeah, single rolling pristines onto high tier boots is a pretty good way of doing things for your boot crafts if you want to get into that. And then the actual trap setup, if you're wondering, is Ice Trap into Hypothermia, Trap and Mine, Cluster Trap support, and then I was running Increased Area a lot of the time, and my other blue was Ellie Prolif. So you might be able to see in plenty of the gameplay sections that Ellie Prolif is actually freezing a lot of enemies around, and this is a large part of the reason I didn't die in plenty of the encounters throughout maps and legions, because every time I'd throw a trap, if just about anything gets hit, it prolifts freeze to everything, and then I'm somewhat safe against all of that content. If I didn't run Ellie Prolif, I think I would have died a lot more, so there's something to be said for being able to freeze everything there and keep that in mind. But when I went into single target, I swapped in for crit strikes, used Conk Effect, and I got something like, I don't know, 3-4 million trap damage if all of my traps are down at the same time. And in a lot of those boss fights, you can see that you can preload your traps before they come out, so then you can instant kill those bosses. It's pretty convenient and rather handy. I went with Hatred and Zealotry as my two auras, and then I could squeeze in a little Precision there as well, which is just something for 40 crit. Doesn't really do anything other than that. But Zealotry and Hatred are the choices, because I do have a Watcher's Eye that most importantly did the cold damage affected by Hatred, because that scales well with Ice Trap, so got that. But I managed to get some Consecrated Ground on Zealotry, damage taken as well, which helps just a little bit for damage, but as you can see, damage wasn't really a problem on this build. And yeah, that's about it to say about that one, I guess. In my gloves here, I had a Ice Nova, which is Vile Ice Nova, Trap and Mind Damage, Lightning Spire, and Controlled Destruction. Vile Ice Nova, just for the Legions. Lightning Spire, also kind of for Legions, but nice for pre-firing a few other situations as well. The passive tree is a pretty generic sort of spellcaster tree for Inquisitors, but it also grabs some trapping nodes, like these ones here for multi, these ones here for trigger area. You get these for the frenzies and a little bit of life over here as well, and then these that make it so that your traps don't die immediately, and then have a bit more crit and trigger area effect. That's about all I'll say about this one, guys. It is a okay trapper. The playstyle wasn't really to my liking, and for Legion I don't think it's very good, but I'll leave it here with you if you want to do it. And I've got a very smashing Uber Elder straight after this. As you saw, level 68 Uber Elder was doable, so with a full gear setup I've got like 4 times more damage or something, and it's a pretty ridiculous setup for endgame bossing. So thank you very much for watching, and see you next time. I'm gonna try and phase Shaper before he leaves.
M'lady.
Yep, got him. Whoa, got a big lag spike just then. That almost got me killed. Portals? They coming back, or... Wait, what? I had one phase of portals? What's up with that? Is shooting where I wasn't yet? Or did I fuck that up? Ow. Oh god. I got careless. If you freeze the portals, do they just not come back? Because this is not normal behavior. There is usually more than one portal phase. Because either I've never seen or I've never noticed it.